Emma sat at the edge of her kitchen table, staring out the rain-streaked window. The soft patter of the drops against the glass seemed louder than usual tonight, echoing the quiet emptiness of the house. The clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time that sometimes felt heavier than the clouds hanging low in the sky. She traced the rim of her coffee mug with her finger, lost in thought, wondering how life had grown so ordinary and, yet, so lonely. Her 10-year-old son, Noah, was in the living room, headphones on, focused on his homework. Emma could hear the faint scratching of pencil on paper, the occasional mumble as he worked through a math problem. She admired his dedication, his quiet determination. But a pang of sadness hit her as she realized how little they truly shared these days. She missed the days when they would sit together after school, laughing over small jokes, sharing secrets that only a mother and son could understand. Emma sighed, a sound that seemed to carry all the loneliness she had kept tucked away for years. Widowed for 5 years now, she had done her best to provide a stable, happy home for Noah. She had friends, of course, but the kind of connection she craved, the warmth, the shared laughter, the sense of being truly understood, had faded into a distant memory. Most nights after putting Noah to bed, she would sit alone, listening to music that once made her feel alive, feeling the quiet ache of a heart that still longed for companionship. But tonight was different. Tonight there was a spark of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. She had invited David over, a friend from college who had recently returned to town. They hadn't seen each other in over a decade, yet their emails and phone calls over the past month had brought a sense of excitement Emma hadn't realized she still carried. There was a gentle familiarity in his words, a warmth that made her heart race and her cheeks flush. Even after all these years, Noah looked up briefly from his homework and caught sight of the box David had sent her, neatly wrapped and sitting on the counter. Curiosity flickered across his young face. "Who's that from?" he asked, his voice quiet, cautious. Emma forced a smile, hiding the flutter in her chest. "It's from an old friend, honey. Someone I haven't seen in a long time." She tried to sound casual, but even she could hear the small tremor in her voice. Noah nodded, going back to his work. Unaware of the storm of emotions brewing in her heart, she spent the next hour tidying the kitchen, nervously arranging snacks and setting up the small tea station they might use. Her mind raced with questions she hadn't anticipated. Would it feel awkward, or would it feel like no time had passed at all? Would she be able to hide the nerves fluttering in her stomach? When the doorbell finally rang, Emma's pulse quickened. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her sweater, and opened the door to find David standing there, smiling in that familiar, effortless way that made her heart skip. "Emma," he said softly, as if greeting her after just yesterday instead of 10 years. "It's really good to see you again." The first few minutes were filled with polite conversation and laughter that flowed easily, almost too easily. They shared stories from the past, recalling college adventures, old friends, and small moments that once seemed insignificant but now felt treasured. Emma felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet reassurance that life might still have surprises in store, that happiness could find her even in the quiet corners of her life. Meanwhile, Noah watched from the couch, pretending to focus on his homework, but unable to ignore the way his mother's laughter filled the room. He noticed the softness in her eyes, the way her smile lingered a moment longer than usual when she looked at David. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it planted a seed of curiosity and unease in him. Something had shifted in the air, something he didn't understand but instinctively felt. As the evening wore on, the rain continued to tap gently against the windows, and the three of them settled into a quiet rhythm. Emma poured tea, and David complimented the way the house looked, praising her touch for making it feel warm and welcoming. She felt a twinge of gratitude and longing, realizing that she had missed not just the presence of another person, but the feeling of being seen, truly seen, by someone who understood her. Noah, meanwhile, retreated to his room under the guise of finishing homework, but kept thinking about what he had glimpsed. The unusual closeness between his mother and her friend, He didn't know exactly what it meant, only that it made his chest tighten in ways he hadn't experienced before. A sense of curiosity mixed with unease, leaving him with more questions than answers. As Emma and David talked late into the night, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The world seemed to stretch just a little wider, full of possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to imagine. Yet, at the same time, a quiet tension lingered, unspoken, like the calm before a storm. Something had shifted tonight. Something that would ripple through their lives in ways none of them could yet foresee. And for Noah, though he didn't realize it, this evening would mark the beginning of a journey. He hadn't chosen, but could never forget a journey where the lines between family, friendship, and the stirrings of the heart would blur, leaving all of them changed forever. Emma couldn't stop thinking about David long after he left that evening. Even the soft hum of the night seemed to echo the memories he had stirred. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to drift back over a decade, to the days when their friendship had been the center of her world. They had met in college, both shy but drawn to each other's laughter. David had a way of noticing the small things about her. The way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the soft hum she made when reading poetry aloud. Emma remembered the late nights they spent in the library, huddled over books, sharing stories of their childhoods and dreams for the future. Those conversations had felt like magic to her, like someone had finally found the key to understanding her. Yet life had its own plans. Graduation had pulled them in different directions. David had moved across the country for work while Emma had stayed behind, eventually meeting the man who would become Noah's father. For years, they had remained friends in letters, emails, and occasional calls. But the closeness of those college nights had been replaced by distance and missed opportunities. Now, seeing David again, Emma realized just how much of her heart had remained untouched by anyone else. The friendship that had once been effortless had left a quiet longing inside her, a sense of connection she hadn't felt in years. There was a gentleness in him, a thoughtfulness that made her feel both safe and alive, as if the world had momentarily stopped for them alone. Noah, meanwhile, noticed that his mother sometimes lingered on the phone in the evenings, her lips curving in a small, secret smile. He didn't know who she was speaking to at first, but he felt the subtle shift in her energy. She seemed lighter, more animated, and somehow happier. Noah found himself wondering what had changed. Curiosity tugged at him, but he didn't ask. Instead, he watched quietly, noticing little details like the way she hummed softly while preparing dinner, or how she sometimes stared out the window as if seeing someone in the rain. That afternoon, Emma had found an old photo tucked in a drawer, a picture of her and David at the college festival, arms wrapped around each other in a hug that had meant nothing to anyone but them. The memory came flooding back, the laughter, the excitement, the late-night talks on the dorm balcony where they had shared their fears and dreams. Emma ran her fingers over the faded edges, a smile tugging at her lips. For a moment, the years melted away, and she was that young woman again, full of hope and possibility. Her heart, unafraid of what the future might hold. David had been a mirror to her younger self, reflecting not just who she was, but who she could be. And though time had separated them, the bond had never fully faded. It had been waiting quietly, like a seed under the snow, ready to bloom when the right moment arrived. The next day, as Emma prepared breakfast, she found herself humming a tune she hadn't remembered in years, one they had both loved in college. Noah looked up, puzzled but smiling. "Mom, that song? Where did you learn it?" Emma paused, a soft laugh escaping her. "It's an old favorite. Someone special used to play it for me a long time ago." She hesitated, then added, "Sometimes. Memories remind us that some connections never really go away." Noah tilted his head, sensing that there was a story there he wasn't meant to fully understand yet. Still, he liked the way it made his mother glow, and he found himself wanting to see that smile more often. Later, Emma found herself looking through old emails from David, rereading the words that had made her heart swell with joy. Simple greetings, shared jokes, little notes of encouragement. Each message reminded her of how deeply they had understood each other. How rare and comforting it had felt to be known so completely. She realized that in the years she had spent raising Noah, she had never fully let herself feel the possibility of new beginnings, of rediscovering connection in a way that didn't threaten the stability of her life. David, she thought, was a gentle reminder that the heart could hold many kinds of love for her son, love for family, and the quiet, unspoken love of a lifelong friend who understood her soul. That realization brought both hope and a little fear. Could she allow herself to embrace the past without Dee? The next morning, the sunlight poured softly through the kitchen window, casting warm golden streaks across the floor. Emma had woken early, her mind buzzing with memories of the night before. She tried to shake off the fluttering excitement in her chest, telling herself it was just nostalgia, but deep down, she knew it was more. Noah padded into the kitchen in his slippers, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, can we have pancakes today?" he asked, his voice still drowsy. Emma smiled, reaching for the flour. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's make it an extra special breakfast." As she whisked the batter, there was a soft knock at the door. Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected David so early. When she opened it, she saw him holding a small, wrapped package. "I thought I'd stop by," he said, his voice warm but casual. "I found this and remembered you used to love it." Emma took the package, feeling the familiar surge of emotion that always came with his presence. She didn't open it immediately. Instead, she simply smiled, letting the moment linger, letting the years between them melt away. There was something about seeing him here in her kitchen that made her heart beat a little faster. Even though they were just standing in the morning light, Noah glanced up from his cereal, curious. "Who's that?" he asked innocently, tilting his head. Emma's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, this is David," she said softly. "He's an old friend of mine, someone I've known a very long time." Noah studied him quietly. Something about David felt different now. It wasn't just that he looked older or that he smiled differently. There was a presence, a calm, gentle energy that seemed to fill the room. Noah didn't understand it, but he could sense that David mattered to his mother in a way that was special. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk in the nearby park. The air was crisp, the kind that hinted at the approaching fall, and the golden leaves crunched softly under their feet. Emma and David walked side by side, sharing stories about their days, while Noah ran a few steps ahead, pretending to chase squirrels but actually keeping an eye on them as they reached a quiet bench under a tall maple tree. David paused and looked at Emma. "Do you remember this spot?" he asked, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Emma laughed lightly, her eyes sparkling. "Of course I do. We used to sit here for hours talking about everything and nothing." The memory hit her like a gentle wave. She remembered their laughter echoing through the campus park, the way David had listened when no one else seemed to understand her. She remembered the comfort of knowing that someone truly saw her, the real Emma, not just the mother, the neighbor, or the friend everyone else expected her to be. "Some things never really change," David said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Some connections, no matter how much time passes, stay with you. And sometimes, life gives you a second chance to notice them again." Emma felt her chest tighten. She had spent so many years trying to move forward, trying to fill her life with routine and responsibilities, that she had almost forgotten how it felt to be seen, to be appreciated for the person she truly was. And now, standing there under the golden leaves, with the crisp air around them and the laughter of her son drifting in the background, she realized that she hadn't forgotten it, had just been waiting for the right moment to return. Noah, watching them from a few steps away, noticed the subtle shift. He couldn't see the years of memories or the depth of feelings between them, but he could feel it in the way his mother's eyes softened when she looked at David, and in the gentle ease of their conversation. Something had changed, and he felt it deep in his chest. A mix of curiosity and concern, though he didn't fully understand why. As they continued walking, a small accident sparked the moment that would linger in Emma's memory for days. Noah tripped over a tree root, landing softly on the damp ground. David was instantly by his side, steadying him and brushing leaves from his hair. "Are you okay, buddy?" David asked, concern clear in his voice. Noah nodded, a little embarrassed, but he looked at David differently now. Seeing a caring figure he could trust, Emma watched the exchange with a gentle smile, a warmth spreading through her chest. That simple act, so ordinary yet so meaningful, reminded her why she had always valued David's presence. He didn't just share her laughter. He shared her life, her moments, big and small. By the time they returned home, the sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the living room floor. Noah was absorbed in a drawing, and Emma found herself sitting quietly with David on the couch, talking about memories, dreams, and the strange coincidences that life had thrown their way. "I sometimes wonder," Emma admitted softly, "how things might have been if we hadn't drifted apart. But I also think, maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. Maybe life needed us to grow before we could meet here in this moment." David nodded, a gentle understanding in his eyes. "I think you're right. The timing wasn't ours to control. But the feeling, the connection, that's always been real. And now it's ours to notice again." Emma felt a surge of gratitude and hope. She realized that the past and the present weren't separate, they were intertwined, leading her to this moment of clarity, of joy, and of quiet excitement for what lay ahead. She didn't know exactly where it would go, but she felt certain that the bond she had shared with David had returned for a reason, and that the story of their connection was far from over. And somewhere nearby, Noah watched them, sensing without fully understanding that the world had shifted in subtle ways. Ways that would change the rhythm of their lives, their laughter, and their hearts, leaving them all on the edge of something new and beautiful. The evening sky was painted in shades of pink and gold as Emma and David sat on the small bench outside her home. Noah was inside, drawing quietly at the kitchen table, his laughter occasionally drifting through the open window. The soft hum of life around them made the moment feel delicate, almost fragile, as if the world had paused just for them. Emma shifted slightly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the bench, a nervous habit she had always carried. She wanted to speak, to share the years of feelings she had kept tucked away, but the right words seemed to evade her. David's presence beside her made her heart flutter, yet a gentle restraint kept her still. There was so much she wanted to say, so much longing. But the years of separation had built a careful wall between them, and neither knew how to begin dismantling it. David seemed to feel the same hesitation. He looked at Emma with quiet intensity, a soft smile playing on his lips. But there was a weight in his eyes, a hint of unspoken regret. He had never stopped thinking about her, never forgotten the small moments they had shared in college, the late-night conversations, the walks under starlit skies, the laughter that had once echoed so freely between them. And yet, life had led him away, carried him down paths that had kept them apart. I never imagined we'd meet again like this," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned slightly to look at him, unsure if she should reveal how deeply the years of separation had affected her. "Sometimes I think about all the things I never said, all the moments I missed because we were apart." David nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on hers. "I know what you mean," he said gently. "There are so many words I wish I had spoken, things I kept inside thinking it was safer that way. But maybe it's never too late to speak them now." Emma's chest tightened. The truth of their connection, the bond that had never truly broken, hung between them like a fragile thread. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. They had both grown, changed, and carried their own lives. Yet here they were, reunited by chance, their hearts recognizing a familiar rhythm that had never truly faded. For a long moment, they sat in silence, letting the weight of the past settle alongside the possibility of the present. Emma thought of Noah, of the life she had built, of the careful balance she had maintained to protect him and herself. And yet, in David's presence, she felt a stirring of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Quiet hope that maybe happiness could still find her, even in the midst of her responsibilities. "I wonder," Emma began hesitantly. If things could have been different. If we hadn't drifted apart, would we have found this moment sooner? David smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the glow of the setting sun. I've thought about that a lot, he admitted. But I also believe that maybe everything had to happen the way it did. Life gave us time to grow, to learn, to become the people we needed to be before we could truly appreciate this moment. Her heart ached with the weight of understanding. The unspoken feelings they had carried for years were not gone, they had simply waited. Like a dormant flame, ready to be reignited. She realized that longing, though painful at times, had also been a form of preservation. It had kept the connection alive, quietly ensuring that neither of them ever fully let go. David reached out instinctively, his hand hovering near hers. He didn't touch, not yet, respecting the fragile boundaries of hesitation that still lingered between them. I've missed this, he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. Not just your friendship, but the way you make everything feel lighter, brighter. I think I've missed the person you bring out in me more than I realized. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief and longing. She wanted to close the distance. The rain began again that evening, soft and persistent, a gentle rhythm against the windows of Emma's home. She and David sat together in the living room, sipping tea and watching the drops slide down the glass. Outside, the world was blurred, quiet, and reflective, perfect for the kind of conversation they had been both avoiding and longing for. Noah was in his room, reading quietly, the soft shuffle of pages creating a background hum. Emma could hear him occasionally giggle at the story, but mostly he was absorbed, leaving the living room to a silence that was full of tension, warmth, and unspoken feelings. Emma shifted in her seat, hands wrapped around her mug. She had been holding herself back for years, restraining the feelings she had carried for David since college. But something about tonight, the rain, the quiet, the way he looked at her made it impossible to stay silent any longer. She felt a flutter of nerves, a mixture of fear and anticipation, as if the words themselves might change the world once they were spoken. David noticed the change in her posture, the way her eyes flickered to his and then away. He reached out, resting a hand lightly on hers, not touching too firmly, but enough to communicate understanding. Emma, he said softly, you've been quiet tonight. Something on your mind? She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her heart was pounding, yet in a strange way, she felt ready. David, there's something I need to tell you, she began, her voice trembling only slightly. All these years, I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped caring. David's eyes widened just a fraction, but the rest of his face remained calm, encouraging. Emma, he whispered, a soft smile forming. I've been waiting to hear that. I've felt the same way. Even when life pulled us apart, I never forgot. You've always been here. In my thoughts, in my heart. The room seemed to hold its breath. Emma felt a weight lift off her chest. The heavy burden of years of unspoken feelings suddenly eased. For a moment, words were unnecessary. They simply sat together, letting the truth flow between them silently, comfortably, powerfully. Then, Emma looked toward the window, watching the rain streak the glass. I was scared, she admitted quietly. Scared that expressing how I felt might change everything. Scared that life had moved on, that we had changed too much. I didn't want to hurt you or make things complicated for Noah, but I also realized I can't ignore this anymore. I can't pretend these feelings don't exist. David nodded slowly, his thumb brushing the back of her hand in a gentle, reassuring gesture. I understand, he said. I was scared too. Scared that too much time had passed, that maybe we weren't the same people we used to be. But seeing you again, talking, laughing, I realized that the bond we shared never really disappeared. It just waited for the right moment to be recognized again. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Though they were not sad, they were tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. She realized that their connection had endured despite distance, time, and life's obstacles. It had survived because it had always been real, waiting patiently for them to be ready. For the first time, they spoke without hesitation, acknowledging years of longing, moments of hesitation, and feelings that had never faded. "I've missed this," Emma said softly. "Missed us. The way you understand me, the way you make life feel lighter." David smiled warmly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've missed it too," he said. "More than I realized. And now that we're here, I don't want to let it go again." Just then, Noah appeared in the doorway, his small frame silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. He had finished his reading, but instead of interrupting awkwardly, he quietly leaned against the frame, observing his mother and her friend. He didn't fully understand the conversation, but he could feel the warmth, the connection, the comfort and happiness that filled the room. Emma noticed him, smiled gently, and waved him over. "Come here, sweetheart," she said softly. Noah approached, curiosity in his eyes but no fear. He could sense that something important was happening, something good. David gave a small wave too, his voice gentle. "Hey, buddy," he said. "I'm glad to see you." Noah smiled back, feeling safe and included. Emma realized in that moment that the turning point wasn't just for her and David, it was for all of them. Their lives, once separate and uncertain, were beginning to intertwine in a way that was tender, promising, and deeply reassuring. The rain outside had slowed, leaving a soft mist in the air. Emma and David sat together, their hands brushing lightly, sharing small smiles and quiet laughter. They didn't need to rush into confessions or promises. The turning point had already been reached simply by speaking the truth, by acknowledging the feelings that had existed for years. It was a moment of clarity and courage, a moment that reminded them both that life could be unpredictable. But the heart often knows its path even when the mind hesitates. And as Noah joined them on the couch, leaning against Emma, the three of them shared a peaceful, connected silence. The unspoken years, the longing, the hesitation, all of it had led them to this turning point. A moment of emotional honesty that changed everything. Emma knew, without a doubt, that nothing would ever be the same again. Not because life had become complicated, but because it had finally become real, true, heartfelt, and shared. And for David, the realization mirrored hers. Sometimes the greatest courage comes in simply saying the words that have waited the longest, and allowing the heart to guide the way in that quiet, rain-drenched evening. The unspoken truths had finally found their voice. And in doing so, they opened the door to a future full of hope, connection, and a love that was patient, mature, and beautifully safe for their hearts and for the little family that now felt whole again. The morning sun streamed gently through the kitchen window, casting a golden glow across the small, cozy room. Emma hummed softly as she prepared breakfast, her movements calm and deliberate. Yet inside she felt a quiet excitement she hadn't known for years. Today felt different, not because of the routine of cooking or the familiar smells of coffee and toast, but because of the quiet understanding that had settled over her heart. Noah bounded into the kitchen, his sneakers squeaking lightly against the polished floor. "Good morning," he exclaimed, his smile wide and bright. Emma turned to him, returning the smile, feeling a warmth that went beyond the simple joy of seeing her son happy. Something had shifted in their home, in their lives, and even in Noah, though he couldn't yet fully name it. David stepped in behind her, carrying a small bouquet of daisies he had picked from the park that morning. He placed them on the counter, leaning slightly toward Emma. "For you," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers. The gesture was simple, yet Emma felt the weight of the years they had shared, the laughter, the longing, the quiet moments of connection that had built a bridge back to this day. Noah noticed the flowers and looked between them, curiosity shining in his eyes. "They're really pretty," he said. Emma smiled at him, brushing his hair back gently. "Yes, they are. And they remind us that sometimes the best things in life are simple, and they bloom when we least expect them." They all moved to the small dining table, the three of them settling into a rhythm that felt familiar yet new. Conversation flowed easily, laughter sprinkled in between, and Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. It was a calm, steady joy, the kind that comes from knowing that the people you love are safe, cared for, and present in your life. After breakfast, Emma, David, and Noah decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Noah ran ahead, his laughter echoing down the quiet streets. While Emma and David walked side by side, their conversation light yet meaningful. They spoke about everyday things, yet beneath their words was an unspoken understanding, a recognition of the bond that had survived time, distance, and hesitation at the park. They stopped by a small wooden bench beneath a maple tree. The golden leaves swirled in the wind, a soft dance that mirrored the gentle rhythm of their hearts. Noah began drawing in his sketchbook, capturing the scene around him with focused attention while Emma and David sat together, shoulders just barely touching. "You know," Emma began softly, "I think the best moments in life aren't always the big dramatic ones. Sometimes they're quiet, simple, ordinary days like this with the people you care about most. They mean more than any grand gesture ever could." David nodded, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "I couldn't agree more. And maybe that's what makes this feel so right. Being able to share the small moments. Knowing we're here for each other and for Noah, and that all of this, is real." Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of contentment. She had spent so many years protecting her heart, trying to balance life and responsibility, that she had almost forgotten how it felt to simply let happiness in. And now, with David by her side and Noah's laughter filling the air, she realized that happiness could feel gentle, steady, and profound all at once. Noah looked up from his drawing, holding it out for them to see. "Look, I drew us," he said proudly. Emma and David leaned in to admire the picture. 3 figures under a tree, smiling, connected, and surrounded by the warmth of a golden sun. Emma's heart swelled and David smiled, ruffling Noah's hair lightly. "That's perfect," Emma said, her voice soft. "Exactly.